course I'm condensing into a few minutes talk 60 years experience. It is a very gradual unfolding. But I'm sure many of you have been practicing for some time and must also have had your own unfolding. Well, everybody's is unique, so we can sort of share experience, but seldom repeat it, which is another reason why we should, as I was well taught, not look for results, because you never know where you're going, really. If you look for results, all you do is project your own ideas forward. Just sit down and let go. And then I suppose through 60 years of practice, the bits of the jigsaw fit more together, and what was at first an intimation becomes a bit more of a realization, and it ends up not only certain, but a surer, a more certain reality than what we leave behind. So we grow in confidence, and then you begin to discriminate between what is more real and less real. And yes, of course, as a young man, the world was my reality, my farm. Remained so for many years. Now in old age it seems ever more obvious that the body fades out, the mind doesn't function very well, and yet this other grows ever stronger. I'm not sure that we can do very much by our own efforts. When I hear talk about what can we do or what can I do, I'm a bit wary of all that. Because one of the things that becomes more questionable is this whole thing. For years and years I didn't know what the ego was. I spent ages reading clever books trying to tell me what the ego was. But eventually I realized it's I, me, mine. And collectively, of course, we. I, me and mine. I think that's what they call the ego. I may be wrong. Anyway, it'll serve its purpose. Well, you see, what is it that isn't present? And what is it that isn't this oneness? Well, of course, it's me, isn't it? And you. So somewhere, way back, we became separated, didn't we? It's all story is told in Genesis, in the first chapters. Here we were in paradise without a care in the world, and then it fell. Oh, incidentally, remember Adam was singular, wasn't he? Just one man. One. And then, gradually, we were expelled, weren't we? And as God said, cursed is the ground for thy sake. And hence this thing of sin came into the world. Now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about sin, which is rather unfashionable these days, but that I found it a very, very helpful thing. I'd like to give you a little demonstration, if I may, which is a bit confusing. It would be easier if the sun was shining. But look, there's plenty of lights in front of me. Can you see my face is lit? Now, if I turn this way around, what happens? My face is in darkness, isn't it? In shadow. So I cast the shadow. I project the works of darkness. Simple as that. If I turn back to the light, I'm in the light. I see. Here I don't see. So we have to go to school and get educated because we don't see, we don't know. Come to conferences like this because we think we don't know. turn back here to the world of light. Just like when we came to stillness. Not only light, but light in weight, wasn't it? There was no weight in stillness. The light. And there's no question there, is there? It's light. So here we have the simple thing. It's a matter of turning away. And the word, as far as I understand it, the word repentance, which was the first word, I believe, spoken by Jesus, repent just means turning back, turning round, back with the light. Now, we can go on forever and ever sorting out the works of darkness, where the blind lead the blind. And this is the world, which we never get right, do we, for all our efforts. And the other great feature of this is that here is one. And here I'm separate. Oh, poor me, I'm lost. I don't know what to do. I don't like the other people. You see? We can make these issues we can go about it, and analyse every detail and get very complicated about it. But actually the principle is dead simple. It's just like that. It's just a turn. You see, look, light, shadow. So that's, as I understand it, sinners. You see, when we're in the light, we see light. And if you're lucky enough to get really into the big country in meditation and open up to, light, there is no more darkness whatsoever. It just doesn't exist. The sun sees no shadow, does it? And in light there is no dark. I promise you. I speak from experience. There's no more death. These things are of the lower world, you see, because our bodies are really crystallizations of ignorance. They're crystallizations of not being in the light. That's why they're dark. Look. It's dark, isn't it? If I hold up my hand, it casts a shadow. Because the body is a work of darkness. No matter how beautiful it is when we're young, we may look into each other's eyes occasionally and see more or less of light. And that's we call a window of the soul, don't we? And it means more than anything else. We immediately see into something. If anything is real in a person, it's usually the light in the eyes. But how often, how seldom you actually see a clear eye. Usually our eyes are clouded or they're absent, or they don't even look at you. How seldom it is to see deep into someone's eyes, really. See the love light in each other's eyes, the reality of the person. Well, it's not, of course, it's the first steps in reality, because reality is an ever-expanding reality. See, we're dealing with the infinite, which has no end. That's why you can't explain it, you don't know it. No one can explain. What do we see in each other's eyes? Who can explain it? So I commend to you, dear, the use of the word sin. And you see, because when I turn away, when I forget, which of course I do, we all do, we forget, we're absent. We're in a world of dark. I see everything as dark, don't I? So, I am the first of sinners. And this is why the only description of myself I really feel safe with these days is first of sinners. I commend you to consider the same thing. Because, we say, smile and the world smiles with you, To the pure, all things are pure. So whenever we see any problems or questions or something unpleasant or something we don't like, who's at fault? The other person? The government? Or me? That's right. Bring it back here. Now, this meaning of those words spoken to me so long ago begin to make sense, don't they? To make whole, be whole. You see, the buck starts here. Not much use passing it on. So again, one of the principal commandments of Jesus was judge not. Because the moment you judge, you're projecting your own separate ego onto the situation, making it worse. When we look at something with condemnation in our eyes, what do? We just magnify the darkness, don't we? So it gets worse. The more we dwell on darkness, the bigger it gets. And that's the wonderful thing about spiritual practice, that willy-nilly, whether you want to do it or not, if twice a day you just sit down, and whether you meditate or say your prayers or read the good book or whatever you do, just turn in the right direction. And it helps carry you through. Because we're constantly being pulled back. We forget, we lose direction. And the work is to maintain direction. That's really practice. A long, slow, patient plod through countless times when you don't want to do it and every condition's against you. This is the work, the great work. You don't always have nice experiences. And you never have a bad, I've never had a bad experience, but I've had plenty of time just sitting there thinking and worrying, And then you get these, like the cloud shining, like the sun shining through the clouds, you get moments of grace. Think of grace like spiritual sunshine. You get cloudy days, you get a bit of sunshine. Sometimes a lot of sunshine, but rarely in England. But to bring it back to my fault, this is very salutary. Good thing to do. I am the first of sinners. And then you see, you begin to understand what it means to be saved by grace. Because I can't do anything. All I can do is try to turn this way, and then sometimes the sunshine breaks through. Let's come back to being still. You are being nice and attentive now. You're all very good looking at me. Nice and quiet. Let's be even more quiet now. Find another depth of stillness, you see. Depth upon depth upon depth of stillness. What is the last words Jesus said, wasn't it? I am with you always. God is with us. Are we with him? That's the great question. So it's a pilgrim's progress. Fight the good fight against the works of darkness. And indeed knowledge is helpful along the way. But knowledge can only take us so far. And meditation is a wonderful way of making us acquainted with a world beyond the thinking mind, beyond the discursive mind, which is so obviously here, as you can experience here and now in the silence. And see, meditation can open it up and open it up, ever greater reality. And where does it end? And in a way, it's rather like going up in an aeroplane. You go up. Yes, this is another way of explaining what it does. That just like an aeroplane or balloon, it goes up through the clouds, doesn't it? The clouds of the mind. What's up there? The lovely open sky that goes on forever. Where does it end? The human problems just down here in the airport and in the clouds. It's just a layer of vibration between bondage and freedom. Well, we're bound actually by the mind, aren't you? By attachment to the mind. And the more you access beyond, well, you know, clouds are just clouds, aren't they? You don't worry about them too much. Sometimes they're horrid. Yes. Could give us a lot of trouble, depression, all sorts of things. Being under the weather. I've suffered from depression. It can be dreadful go on for years. What can we do? Just keep on plodding on with practice. Yes, do please interrupt me, dear. It's very helpful to me if any of you do interrupt and raise a question. It means I can go off on another theme, you see. I know what to do.
Did you use meditation to achieve what you want to do?
Well, there's a book. These, incidentally, I can make a plug for my books. These little booklets we've given you actually are a sort of advertisement, hoping they'll whet your appetite to buy and read my books, which tell the story of my long, muddled life of failure, of all the awful things I've done that have happened to me along the way. But one of them, this book, Mystic Approaches, on the back cover, I've written to head the back cover, how can I best serve the world I love? And this was my great question for many years. As a young man, as a young farmer, this is written in what's on your iPhones, isn't it? One of my great experiences, I just loved my farm. You know, with a passion. I don't think anyone but a farmer can really understand how a farmer can love his land. And I loved my grass more than anything. And one day I realized that I couldn't walk across this grass without hurting it. What's it all about? What on earth is it? How can I, who love this like my own, can't do anything without hurting it? And then I remember when my first lambs were born on a snowy April morning under a stone wall, going down there in the early dawn, finding these little lambs there, and thinking of the phrase in the Bible, Lamb of God, that takes away the sins of the world. What does that mean? Holy innocence. And then these lovely lambs grow up, and just like the grass crushed beneath my boots, these lambs are sent to slaughter, sacrificed, so you and I can live. Just like the vegetables are. Don't think you're avoiding every vegetable you've eaten today, fruit and vegetable, you're killing it, aren't you? Crushed it in your teeth, or it's been killed for your sake, sacrificed for you. So we're all tarred with the same brush, none of us can avoid it. You can't walk without hurting something, can you? Or breathing in some bug or something and killing it. So you see, this led me on to thinking, well, what on earth is Jesus? So I'd been brought up to think that Jesus was a man. Well, I dare say he was. After those 10 years of boarding school, I wasn't too keen on men. Actually, I never have been really. I always rather preferred nature. And that's why I'm basically distrustful of the works of man. So I'm a bit sceptical about human knowledge. And people who think they know, yes, anybody who thinks they know, dear, is dead certain they don't. You can be sure of that. So beware of people who think they know. Yes, let me come back to where I was. Yes, Christ, what is Christ, you see? So Christ began to expand. Those little lambs sacrificed for me, just like Christ on the cross. And the grass sacrificed for me. So doesn't every blade of grass, every flower, never mind the lambs, all the people that are sacrificed for the sake of others, become a sort of mini Christ? What is not Christ? Well, that's how I've thought all my life, really. Again, I may be wrong. I'm sure some people will tell me I am, but that's how it seems to me. The all in all, you see, that is sacrificed for our sin of leaving the world of spirit so that we're embodied into these great heavy bodies that crush the grass. Anything that dies is sin. So anything of us that dies, thoughts that we lose them, is sin. Because in the real world there is no death, I assure you. Because in meditation, well, you can experience it just by coming into stillness, which is like the threshold, you see, of the spiritual world. And the deeper you go into the spiritual world, the more obvious it becomes, you see. But this world is a sort of... the beauties of this world are really like a sort of shadow of the real world, where you see the glory of God. And the direction of real meditation is from glory to glory. That's how I know. It's when you get with practice, it becomes ever more glorious. And there's the world is also glorious. The more your eyes are clear, the more pure your eyes are, the more beautiful everything is. But the real beauty is its spirit. This world is a fallen world. And of course, everything in this world that dies, the animals too, everything is corrupted by man, is infected by this disease of man, which is what we call humanity. That's why it's cursed for our sake. I am the first of sinners. We'll do what we can to make the world a better place. God bless us. But we're still in exile, aren't we? And however many trees we plant, or whatever we do, we're still going to die. And so with the animals, everything around us. What was your question, dear, about what did I want to achieve? That's right. Yes, I told you. How can I best help the world I love? And then underneath it I write, the answer led him, that's me, deeper into prayer. And perhaps I could just say a little bit to you on my understanding of prayer. Well, of course it starts with words, doesn't it, as usual in this world. And usually with God bless Mummy and Daddy and the things that are close to us. Well, incidentally, through my years, I've lived several years in Russia. I've learned a lot there, especially about faith. Russians say that the two purest prayers are the prayers of a child and the prayer of a mother praying for her child. And all us clever people who, try to be clever with it. We may have, you see, the essence of it all is the pure heart, isn't it? God doesn't want knowledge. What does God ask us for? Love. First commandment, isn't it? Love God. You don't have to work it out with your head. Any fool can love God. Once you get the idea of something bigger than yourself, that's near enough. Be it the next local football team. And then that expands to the stars and beyond. So that's really why I like to think of myself now as still a farmer, but a farmer in spirit. And what is prayer really but farming in spirit? It's that TLC factor, that love of a farmer for his land expanded into the whole world. And what's the best service, you see, that we can be here now, in this world? Look, we've just been accessing it ourselves, haven't we? Finding this oneness. Now, Rupert was very clearly explaining how thoughts are creative. They carry a vibration or something. They don't just stop, do they? You find this oneness. And where does it end? Doesn't it vibrate up? You see, so what's our role in this? We haven't created the oneness. It's not our doing, is it? It's here, anyway. All we've done is just access it. Stop our doing and our being and our running around, our thinking, talking. It's here. So you see, really, it's not nothing with me. We are just the impediment. We are just what gets in the way. We're just the darkness that obscures the light. That's what we are. That's what I am. I don't know about you. What do you think about it? And just as grass is the forgiveness of nature and covers over the mess we make of it, God is forgiveness, isn't he? And this is functioning all the time. And again in meditation, did I tell you I've never had a bad experience in all these years of meditation, because you're emerging into ever greater goodness, into ever greater, there are no words for it, but God is good. It's a state of blessedness. And this blessedness, like spiritual sunshine, is just radiating out on the whole world. This is the operative healing of this infinite goodness. If we only allow it, but it's us that stops it. Very often just by thinking and talking about it, which just effectively blocks it, blocks the light, and keeps us all imprisoned in darkness. It's a very sobering experience, my ducks, and it's taken me a long time to sink into me, because it's very painful, because it doesn't half prick all our ideas. But this great bubble of pride, you see, of me being separate, me being something of my worth, human rights and all this sort of thing, you see, all you're doing is just emphasizing the separation, aren't you? Human duty, my dear, human service is a much nobler aim than human rights. The only right we have is to work at the work of repentance, of coming back. And this work of prayer, you see, is really, I don't know if it's possible in this life to eliminate the sin, but we can certainly move in that direction. And thereby, this is what prayer is, you see. You hear of some disaster, some of all these thousands of people dying, but you just recognize that in the real world nobody dies. No such thing as death. And therefore that counteracts the work of darkness. The way to overcome darkness is to let the light shine. Let the light shine, not my light, the light. This is prayer, as I understand it now, which is the same as meditation, of course. So to practice the presence, just to be present, you see. It's nothing to do with me, it's the presence itself, you see, that carries the influence. Now, Ducky, you asked about soil. But let me come back to with my feet on the ground, to talk about what I'm familiar with, which is my beloved Mother Earth. You see, as a young man, I was intrigued by what is fertility. So I'd started to meditate when I was 26, and when I was sort of in my full stride of farming. Well, I don't know how much you know about the soil, but if you just take a handful of soil and consider it fertile soil, that is, not something just from where it's been pressed down, you'll see it's one of the wonders of creation. It's full of life, and clever scientists tell us that there are millions of more microbes in a pinch of soil than there are people in the world or something. But anyway, it's full of life. Most of them you can see with your own eyes, all the little wiggly things. Now, real fertile soil, it can almost walk off your hand. There's the measure. So what are all these little wiggly things? What are worms and all that? They're all life, aren't they? They're all spirit, embodied spirit. You know, which are lifting soil from just mineral matter up to a higher level of life. And then from soil to plants to as far as you ought to go. So, as I understood it, the farmer's first duty is to encourage life. Incidentally, when we walk on the ground, you compress it. It's like putting your foot on a cathedral. You crush it, like a giant treading on a cathedral. It's really awful to recognize our destructiveness. However much we love it and try, we can't walk on tiptoe, and even if we could. And incidentally, why can fairies sit on flowers without hurting them, and we can't? Now then, this is a serious question. Well, I put it to you that perhaps we can be sort of fairies, because the silence doesn't hurt the grass, does it? And the silence can go to Australia, just like that, in the twinkling of an eye. So how do the angels function, and the saints in heaven? Of course, they function in spirit, don't they? So well, I'd like to be a fairy. I think we're all trying to be fairies, aren't we? So we can live in this lovely world without messing it up. That's what we're here for, aren't we? Well, this is the way, my dear. Leave your body, let it go back to Mother Earth. Well, you can't just yet, but I'll be able to quite soon. And then, you see, the less of me, the more of God. self-abandonment to divine providence. There we are. And it starts with the soil, Mother Earth, by the way we encourage life in the soil, life in one another, life in everything. It's the life force, isn't it? That is really the spirit functioning at that level. Well, there's a simple principle about it, dear. Fertility is upward, you see. All that we're talking about, the spiritual work, is upward, you see. It's from weight, from darkness to light. And you see, nature doesn't plough, does she? In nature, look what's happening now. The fallen leaves are just lying as a blanket over the earth, and the earth itself will draw it down. So, well, there are many, generations of farmers and gardeners have loved their land and worked in different ways. But the simple principle, you see, is that the movement to life is from death to life. It's figuratively speaking upwards. In fact, it's always just here and now, because everything is just here and now, isn't it? Come back to this silence. And isn't it? This is the infinite, isn't it? Here in this finite situation of bodies, of limited, heavy bodies and thought, is this infinite. Immortality, eternal. It's not only you and me, it's not only people, it's everything. It's every worm and little creature in the world. Every immortality isn't just for man. The real world, I tell you, this world is just a precipitation, a sort of fallen world, a fallen consciousness. You see, four levels of consciousness. Higher consciousness is spirit, lower consciousness is levels of matter. So just as a farmer's job is to raise the level of life in his land, so our job, or the work of prayer, if you feel you want to do that, is to raise the level of consciousness. That's what it's all about. Raise the level of consciousness in whatever is presented to you, the world or whatever. What's it like when we climb a hill? Or when I stand up like this and look at you. I look down at you and you're down there, aren't you? And I'm up here. So I'm at a higher level of consciousness. And you see the world played out below, the world like a sort of puppet show going on down here. It's easy. Anybody can climb a hill. You look down, you see the traffic crawling along like toys, don't you? Or little houses. From an aeroplane, you see the whole world like a doll's house, don't you? The levels of consciousness. So this is liberty, this is what they call it, liberation, enlightenment. It's just like this. But then the real work starts, you see, which is taking on the burdens of this world. Bear ye one another's burdens, as Christ teaches us. All one can take on of life. Apply this principle to us, then the more use we are in the world. That is service, real service. We'll end up being crucified, of course, like Christ was. Crucified by disease or death or just plain old age, strung up for our heresy. The work, the great work of salvation, of saving. We've talked about visions for the future, isn't it? But the trouble with, you see, the world The old thing is the world, the flesh, and the devil, isn't it? Well, the devil is the ego, of course, is the I, me, mine, which is the cause of all our trouble, the separation. The world, the flesh, and the devil, these are always pulling us away. This is the tempter, you see, the deceiver, that pulls us away. What about? Or but, as whispering in our ear. Now, you see, we just are pulled away and we lose it, don't we? We lose this presence. That's why, we're playing with fire, you see, when you get too far away from it. Because it'll suck you in like a monster, which indeed it is. This monster will devour you. Unless grace comes in, or somebody remembers and can pull you back to the path, to the way. We've lost it a bit now. Let's just come back to stillness. It takes a few moments just to come back to it, doesn't it? Now think of the cross, the dear old cross, the Christian cross. The two arms of the cross. Now think of the outstretched arms like a segment of a circle, segment of a wheel, going from here to there, from past to future. Never-ending wheel of time, past to future. Which is how we live out what we call life. Here today, gone tomorrow. Always change. And now recognize this stillness, which is ever present, doesn't change in contrast to this. It isn't static, it has infinite dimensions, down to outer darkness or upwards to glory. Always in the here and now, on this wheel of time from past to future, in the present, this is the possibility. And this really is our choice. And you see, the future, the real future, is not there. It's not next year or any time. It's not in passing time. It's in this dimension of eternal time, which is always here and now. And this is the perpendicular arm of the cross, you see. Salvation is in finding this eternal now. This is really our choice, to die or not to die. This is really the only choice, isn't it? To be with God, to turn towards God rather, or away from God. Now let's just consider this. Again, come back, you see. What did Jesus call the Spirit? He called it the Comforter, didn't he? But he also called it the Teacher, who will teach us all things. Look, my dears, how can I stand like this and talk like this unless it was real? I couldn't I? If I just read it in a book, it wouldn't carry the same conviction, it wouldn't carry the same authority. So we're talking about reality with a capital R. Now, come into this stillness. So what dies? What dies? Do I die? Do you? Can this die? And what are you? Are you this or are you that? Aren't you this, in the world, and yet not of it? That's how you die gracefully, my ducky. While the body is writhing and screaming on its deathbed, the soul is at peace in God. And this is how to live your life, my dear. Suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune in this life. Yes, you will, dear. This life is a thorny path. Jesus suffered, and so should we, as the Russians say. And you will whether you want to or not. And yet there is this reassurance, this constant reassurance, this invisible friend who holds your hand. If you will hold his, that's the thing, that's our part. We've got to reach and hold that onto that hand. And then you can take life, dear. Honest, it's the best help you'll ever find, because everything else fails. And you don't half realise it when you get to my age, dear, and death round the corner. Because when you're in this, there's no fear, is there? Honest, there isn't, is there? Plenty of fear down here, fear here, oh God, what's going to happen? But in this moment, you see, in the present moment now, which is the presence, you see, there's no fear. Truths are but, down we fall down the slippery slope. And the bottomless pit is waiting there. Oh, this work of salvation is serious. Not only for ourselves, but for everyone. The whole world. Cursed for our sake, because we've left what we are and fallen into what we are not. Which is the corruption of this world. So I suggest this is the real. I don't say it's a vision, and it isn't really for the future, because it's the eternal now, it's the eternal option that's given to us, isn't it? It's hardly a vision, because it's reality, isn't it? It's not something we've cooked up for ourselves. It's realization. Realization of what I am. It's not we that die out, it's the world that then dies out of me. You see? I don't die out of the world. The world dies out of me. You see, the world is my own distorted mind pouring out separation into the world. That's the only thing that can die. Because it's separated from the source of life. I am the first of sinners. And the world is cursed because of my misdemeanor in turning from the light. And I'm doing it every day. It wasn't something a million years ago in the Bible. I'm doing it every day, dear. Every time I forget and I'm pulled away, because the devil is a temptation, born into temptation, then the world is cursed because of me. And that's why death comes into the world. Who else can we blame? Think of the sky, because all the answers to these things they're all in front of our noses, if we will but see. Think of, here we are, we talked about clouds of the mind, haven't we? and going up in an aeroplane. Well, up there, top of the clouds, little wispy little things, you can't even see it. Water vapour, invisible water vapour. What? And then that gradually condenses to form clouds, in other words, problems and questions and things to do. They come down a bit, raindrops, condenses, falls down to rain, rivers, puddles and things, and then may freeze. So spirit descends to matter, precipitates into matter. So you and I are really frozen spirit. That's why we're separate. We're sharp little crystals of ice, frozen spirit. Broken fragments of ice. Frozen spirit. That's why love is the great thing that melts the heart and starts the journey back. Because yes, a lot of people meditate with their heads, but if you can do it with your heart, then of course you're bringing a much more powerful motive force. So yes, if it helps you, you can think of the whole creation as like a great out breath and then an in-breath back again. Maybe, who knows? I don't. We rather like these sort of ideas, don't we? It helps to sort of paint the picture. How do I meditate from the heart? Ducky. It is funny, isn't it? How I was just the same, dear. I remember when I first heard that thing, meditating with the heart, I couldn't figure out what it was meant to do at all, so I tried terribly hard, tried to push it down here somewhere, where I thought my heart was. Well, oh dear, we are funny creatures, aren't we? Tragic comedy life. But how do you meditate from your heart? Well, dear, dead cert, if you're trying to do it, dear, you're not going to be very successful. Because this is why the essence of meditation is to give up all effort. If it takes effort, you're doing it wrong. And another thing is, I can tell you, if it's complicated, it's wrong. So beware of complication, beware of effort, because both these things belong firmly in the world of darkness and separation. Well, in a simple nutshell, dear, meditate on what you love.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for that. That's just simply beautiful.
You know, those of you who are stuck with how to meditate, just meditate on what you love. Best answers are always dead simple, aren't they?
John, thank you so very much.
Is that it then? I'm so worried my voice would give up, but I hope you managed to hear all right.
Thank you very much.
Can I end by, well, I told you a bit about this. This is a sort of advert and actually tells you about all my books in this. It's not so difficult to write a book. The difficulty is getting people to read it.